Hello students, welcome to PhD Jobs and Admission. This is Gauri. So in this video, we are going to see details about a hypothesis testing because in previous examinations, the questions has been asked on this topic like what is the meaning of hypothesis, what are different types of hypothesis, what is type 1 error, type 2 error. So all these things we are going to see in this video. Okay, so view my this video till the end so that all of your concepts about this topic will be cleared, and at the end of this video I'm going to ask you a question to check whether you guys have understood this topic or not. Okay, and after viewing this video you guys have to answer the question through the comments. Okay, so students, as we know that we have to give PhD entrance exam for University of Kerala, and it is on 13th November, and it is of total 100 marks, and it has two sections, section A and section B. Section A is for research methodology, which carries 50 marks, and each question carries 5 marks. So you have to guys answer 10 questions. Okay, so you have to give minimum answer in 10 points to each question to get more than 4 marks for each question. Okay, and for these things we are providing you complete course on research methodology. In that we are providing you full syllabus, video lectures. In that theories and MCQs both are available for you guys. Theory is most important as it is the descriptive type examination, and MCQs is important to get to know more concepts to you. Okay, and because of that all the concepts will be cleared, right? Also we are providing you full syllabus, notes and mock tests. We have 10 mock tests like this, and in each mock test there are 40 MCQs, and total there are 400 MCQs. Okay, we are also providing you more than 1500 MCQs revision PDF. Because of that you guys can revise all this topic very well. Okay, and we are providing all these things in both the languages, that is Hindi and English. Okay, so I am giving you 100% guarantee that because of this course you will guys get passing marks in your examination, and also it will helpful for you to tackle with your interview sessions as well. And so that guys I suggest you to buy this course, and if you want to purchase this course you can download global online app. For that I have given link in the description of this video, or else you can WhatsApp through these contact numbers, and the course fees is only 699 rupees. Okay, so students, let us start with our today's lecture. So in this lecture we are going to see first what is hypothesis, then what is the difference between problem and hypothesis, then what are the different characteristics of hypothesis, then sources of hypothesis, then types of hypothesis, then role of hypothesis, and what are the errors in testing of hypothesis. Okay, now students, let us see what is the hypothesis. Okay, so hypothesis is the assumption about relationship between variables. So it is logically conjectured. Conjectured means guessed. Okay, so logically guessed relationship between two or more variables expressed in the form of a testable statement. Okay, so whatever the relationship between two or more variables, and these relationships are expressed in the form of a testable statement, so that testable statement is called as hypothesis. Okay, so which is the logical guess that we have done about the solution of our research problem. Okay, so these relationships are conjectured, means guessed. These relationships are guessed on the basis of the network of association established in the theoretical framework formulated for the research study. So these relationships are guessed on the basis of the network, okay, of association established in the theoretical framework formulated for the research study. Okay, so what is exactly hypothesis? So hypothesis is a predictive statement, and that relates an independent variable to a dependent variable. So it is the relation between independent variable and dependent variable. Okay, and that's why in this both the things should be available, that is independent variable and dependent variable. So hypothesis is tentative, intelligent, okay, guesses to the solution of the problem. It is a specific statement of prediction, and it describes in concrete terms what you expect to happen in the study. Okay, so it is an assumption about population of study, and it also delimits area of research and keeps researcher on the right track. So it delimits area of research means it avoid the limits of the area of research, and it gives us the right track for our research. Okay, so this is all about the hypothesis. Now students, let us see what is the difference between problem and hypothesis. So as we have seen earlier in this video that hypothesis is the assumption that can be tested and can be proved to be right or wrong. So hypothesis is an assumption, and this assumption can be tested and it also proved to be right or wrong. And what is problem? So problem is a broad question and which cannot be directly tested. Okay, and for testing that particular problem we need hypothesis. Okay, so problem can be scientifically investigated after converting into form of hypothesis. Yes, as I have said earlier that problem should be investigated after converting it into form of hypothesis. So directly we can't test the problem, but we have to test hypothesis. Hypothesis can be tested. Okay, so this is the basic difference between problem and hypothesis. Now students, let us see what are the different characteristics of hypothesis. Okay, so first is conceptual clarity. It means that hypothesis should be clear and precise. Clear and precise. Second is specificity. It means that hypothesis should be specific and limited in scope. Specific and limited in scope. Third is consistency. It means that hypothesis should be consistent with the objectives of research. Okay, consistent with the objectives of research. Objectives of research. Fourth is testability. It means that hypothesis should have capability of being tested. Okay, capability of being tested. Okay, now students, next is expectancy. Expectancy means that hypothesis should state the expected relationships between variables, right? Expected relationships between variables. Next is simplicity. So simplicity means that hypothesis should stated as far as possible in simple terms. Okay, so it should be stated in simple terms. Next is objectivity. It means that hypothesis should not include value judgment, then relative terms or any moral preaching. So it should not include value judgments. It means that it should be objective as much as possible. Okay, next is theoretical relevance. So it should be consistent with a existing theory, right? Consistent with existing theory. Okay, so whatever facts there are available, what is the existing theory available, so the hypothesis should be consistent with that. Okay, and next is availability of techniques. So whenever you are stating the hypothesis, so in that method there should be the statistical methods. Okay, should be there for testing the proposed hypothesis. Okay, for testing the hypothesis, right? So these are the characteristics of hypothesis. Now students, let us see different sources of hypothesis. Okay, so from which sources we can define our hypothesis, right? So first is discussion with colleagues and experts about problem, its origin and objectives in seeking a solution. Okay, so whenever we discuss with our colleagues and experts about a problem, then what is the origin of that problem and what are the different objectives of that problem, and in what way we can find the solution to our problem, right? So after this discussion as well, we can go to the hypothesis statement. Okay, next is examination of data and records for possible trends and peculiarities. Okay, so whenever we examine data and records for possible trends or peculiarities, then we can find out the hypothesis from that as well. Then review of similar studies. Yes, in the previous video we have seen the review of literature, right? So whatever the existing work available, so we review those work, right, which is similar to our current research studies, right? So by reviewing those things also we can reach our hypothesis. Okay, next is exploratory personal investigation or observation. So it means that whenever we personally investigate or we personally observe some facts, then based on that also we can reach the hypothesis. Next is logical deduction from existing theory. So whatever the existing theory available, so the logical deduction from that existing theory is the hypothesis. Next is continuity of research. Okay, so whatever research already available and we continue with that research. Okay, so through that continuity as well we get the hypothesis. Then intuitions and personal experience. So whatever we experience every day in our life and what are the intuitions from that, so based on that also we can reach the hypothesis. So these are the different sources of hypothesis. Now students, let us see different types of hypothesis. So first is descriptive hypothesis. So as the name suggests, descriptive hypothesis describes the different characteristics. Okay, so it is the assumption. So most important thing is assumption, because whenever there is hypothesis there is assumption. Okay, there is prediction. So it is the assumption that describe characteristics such as size, form or distribution of variable. Okay, so in this it is an assumption which describes the characteristics of a variable, right? And that variable can be object, person, organization, situation or event. Okay, for example, public enterprises are more amenable for centralized planning, So here public enterprises is the variable and centralized planning is the characteristic. So in this, centralized planning is the characteristic and which is described. Okay, and public enterprises is the variable. So it is the characteristic of this variable, right? So this is the descriptive hypothesis. Okay, now students, let us see the second type, that is relational hypothesis, which is also called as explanatory hypothesis. Okay, explanatory hypothesis. Okay, so it is the assumption that describe a relationship between two variables. Okay, so here it is the assumption which describes the relationship between two variables. So this relationship suggested may be positive, negative or causal relationship. Positive relationship means if one variable increases, then another variable as well increases. Negative means if one variable increases, then another variable decreases. And causal relationship means that whenever there is a change in one variable, so it causes an effect on another variable. Okay, for example, families. Okay, families with higher income spend more for recreation. So this is the example of causal relationship, because here higher income is the independent variable independent variable, and recreation or spending more for recreation is the dependent variable, because whenever you are changing the independent variable, there is the effect on this dependent variable, right? So whenever you have higher income, then you will spend more. Whenever you have lower income, then you will spend less, right? So this is the causal relationship, and this is the one of the example of relational hypothesis. Okay, now students, let us see the third type, that is null hypothesis. So this hypothesis is stated negatively, and that's why it is called as null hypothesis. So it is no difference, no relationship hypothesis. Okay, so it means that there is no difference exists between parameter and statistic being compared to, or no relationship exists between the variables being compared. So whenever we have the hypothesis, then there are the variables, right? And whenever we state that there is no relationship between those variables, then it is the null hypothesis. Okay, so it is simple, so simple, and it is represented as H0 or HO. For example, in the previous type, we said that there was a relationship between a family's income and also spend on recreation. So whenever we want to state the null hypothesis, then we will say that there is no relationship between family's income and its expenditure or the spending on recreation, right? So here, as we seen that family's income and expenditure on recreation both are variables, right? But here we are stating that there is no relationship between these two variables. It means that it is the null hypothesis. Okay, now student, the last type is the alternate hypothesis. So it describes the researcher's prediction that there exists a relationship between two variables. Okay, so in this hypothesis, we are describing that there is a relationship between two variables. So it is exactly opposite to null hypothesis, right? And it is represented as HA or H1. So for example, let us see the previous example as well. So there is a definite relationship between family's income and expenditure on recreation. Okay, so there is definite relation between family's income and their expenditure on recreation. Okay, so here we are describing that there is relation between these two variables. Okay, that means it is the alternate hypothesis, and it is exactly opposite to the null hypothesis. Okay, now students, let us see what is the function or role of hypothesis. Okay, so it gives definite point to the investigation and provides direction to study. Okay, so whatever research problem we have, so based on that research problem, we define the hypothesis so that we can investigate, right, whether it is true or false. So that's why it gives us the point to the investigation and also provides direction to the study. So it determines the data needs. So whatever data we need, so it determines those data needs. Okay, it specifies the sources of data. Okay, then next is suggest which type of research is likely to be more appropriate. So based on the objectives or the approach of the research, it suggests which type of research is likely to be more appropriate. Okay, so it determines the most appropriate technique of analysis as well. Okay, so whenever there is a hypothesis testing, so based on that hypothesis, it gives us the idea about which analytical technique we can use to interpret the data that is available. Okay, and also it contributes to the development of theory, right? So after hypothesis, right, after testing the hypothesis we will get the results. So based on those results we develop a particular theory, right? So hypothesis basically contributes to the development of theory as well. Now students, let us see the errors in testing the hypothesis, which is the most important topic in the hypothesis part, because in every year the question asked on this topic, what is the type 1 error, what is the type 2 error, and many students get confused in it. So what is type 1 error, right? So whenever we reject null hypothesis that is actually true in population, then we take type 1 error, or we do the type 1 error. Okay, so whenever there is a null hypothesis and it is true, okay, so null hypothesis, and this hypothesis is true, okay, it is correct, and we reject it, then we are making type 1 error. Okay, and it is also called as false positive error, because whatever there is true or positive we are rejecting it, and that's why we call it as false positive, and it is measured by alpha. Okay, it is measured by alpha. Okay, now next is type 2 error. Okay, so when type 2 error occur, whenever we fail to reject null hypothesis that is actually false in the population. Okay, so we have null hypothesis, and it is false. Okay, but we don't reject it, or we accept it, then we do the type 2 error. Okay, and that's why we call it as false negative, because it is negative, right? It is incorrect, it is false. Okay, and again we are accepting it, that's why it is false negative. Okay, and it is measured by beta. Okay, so type 1 means the null hypothesis is true but we are rejecting it, and type 2 error means that the null hypothesis is false but we are accepting it. Okay, now students, let us see the question. The error committed by rejecting an applicant who would have been successful on the job is called. So this is the question regarding to the errors in the testing of hypothesis, right? So which error we commit when we reject an applicant who would have been successful on the job? So it means that this is the hypothesis, null hypothesis, and which is true, and still we are rejecting it. Okay, so this is called as what? So first is true negative error, second is false negative error, third is false positive error, and fourth is true positive error. So guys, you have to answer this question, okay, in the comment box. Okay, thank you for watching this video, and if you like this video then please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. Because of that you will get my videos every day. Okay.